Living room conversation.
If you're live in a room, isn't it a living room? Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Living Room Conversations. I'm Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists, and we are in my living room. We're happy to be here with y'all.
Well, Ryan, thank you for having us in your living room.
Thanks for being here, man, and thank you all for joining us.
Allie has a question for us today. She wants to know, how can I save money on a low income? So
God, that is such a good question, man. It's because we talk about staying out of debt, we talk about having a budget, we talk about financial security, and man, when someone has a low income, this is certainly a valid question.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the simplistic answer of this, and then we can unpack it and make it a little bit more practical, is you either need to make more money or you need to spend less money.
There you go.
Now let's talk about that.
About it a little bit.
And so ideally you can end up doing both over time, which will be really helpful for you. I saw a stat very recently that 90% of Americans have expendable income, even many low income folks. Now you and I grew up really poor. We were in the bottom 10%.
Right.
At least for a good chunk of our childhood, right? Food stamps, government assistance, alcohol abuse problems in the house, some real poverty there.
Yeah.
Not third world poverty, but in terms of America, there was certainly a lot of poverty there. So there was not a lot of expendable income. No. But the good news is that many of us have some wiggle room. However, we often have to give up some of the comforts we think we have. So you mentioned a few things that are really important. First off, if you have debt, you can't really start saving money. You have to pay off the debt, because everything you purchase right now, if you go buy that Starbucks coffee for $5, you're really, let's say you have student loan debt. You have $60,000 worth of student loan debt. Man, you're actually taking out a $5 loan to buy that coffee, because that's $5 you could have put to pay down your student loan debt.
Absolutely.
Now, there are some things that you would borrow on if you were in an emergency situation. Sure. If you are in a blizzard and you don't have housing, then yes, you would borrow money to pay for your housing. And so I don't say, yes, please pay off your student loan before you pay your rent. That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But there are many things. Going out to eat, having a car payment is a luxury that if you have any kind of debt you can't afford. You don't want to have a car payment. By the way, even if you don't have debt, I don't have any debt.
Yeah.
I don't want a car payment, man.
No.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah, a car payment is miserable. That's it's funny, because that's the one thing that I feel like I justified the most growing up. Especially in the days of yesteryear when we were working in the corporate world.
You justified it why?
Well, yeah, I justified it because I was like, you know what? Like, I've got to meet clients, so I've got to have a nice car, and I spend a lot of time in the car. It's at least, sometimes it's an hour to work, and sometimes it's an hour and a half back. There were some days because the region that I covered went all the way from northern Kentucky to northern Dayton. I would spend, 4, maybe 5 hours in the car. So I would tell myself, oh, well, because of all this time I'm spending, because I need to impress clients, it's okay for me to have a car payment.
Right.
And, hindsight, they were just excuses. That's exactly what they were. I mean, now I still have that 2004 Toyota Corolla. Maybe it's not the nicest car, but I got to tell you, I did have that car for a brief period of time when I was still working in the corporate world, when I was trying to get rid of all my debt.
Yeah.
And none of my clients judged me for it. I had one friend who kind of was like ribbing me for having an older Corolla.
But of course, he was more or less judging himself, saying...
Yeah, and he's still my friend. I said to him exactly what I would say to anyone else. I was like, dude, if you're gonna judge me over the car I drive, I don't know if we should be friends. And when I put that into perspective, he was obviously, it was just a joke, and it was, man. I mean, he wasn't really judging me, but yeah, it's unfortunate that we feel like we have to drive a certain car to feel a certain way. It's a bit of a misnomer.
And the same goes with all the other sort of creature comforts we have in our lives. There's nothing wrong with having some of the things in our lives, but when we have to go into debt or we're unable to save for our future self, I look at it as investing in my future self, then that becomes a problem. So that gets us back to this initial point here, is you either need to make more money or you need to spend less. You can't always control whether or not you're going to make more. We all have 24 hours in a day, that's true, and yes, for temporary periods of time, it might make sense for you to work a little bit more, to have a side hustle. I know when I was paying off debt, I delivered pizzas for about a year. That was before Uber and Lyft were around. I would have rather done those instead. And so there are things that you can do to earn extra money to pay down the debt or to save up a little bit more money. But as you are trying to earn more money, I realized that the biggest pay raise I ever gave to myself was simply spending less money.
Yeah, I think we're leaving out like the most important first step to this whole process.
Yes.
You've got to start a budget. You have got to get a budget together. So it doesn't matter where you're at, rich or poor, if you have money problems and you don't have a budget, then you must stop right now and make a budget. And do not ask Josh and I about money problems if you have not made a budget yet. Now, I know some people out there, I was talking to a friend the other day, and they were complaining about their money problems, and I said, well, let me see your budget. And they said, oh, it's not a matter of, if I have enough money during the month to pay for my bills and to pay for what I want, it's just the fact that I don't have the money. So Ryan, I don't need a budget because I already know that I don't have enough money to go around when the end of the month comes around. Okay, that will keep you in debt. That will keep you having money problems, that type of attitude.
You can't afford not to.
Yeah, even if you're in that situation, it is better to have a budget and to know how much money you don't have at the end of the month rather than throwing your hands in the air and just trying to wing it. So
you know what's fascinating is I'm going to give two resources here: the Every Dollar app, and then there's a guy named Mr. Money Mustache, who his family of four, I believe, they live off $24,000 a year, even though he doesn't have to. It's a frugality blog, and we have friends in the financial independence community as well. Sure. So what you're talking about here is making reality a bit more concrete. Right now, we end up with too much month at the end of our money.
Yeah.
And I've paid the bills, but I've also used it in frivolous ways, and I don't realize it because I haven't made it concrete. I haven't put it down on paper or in an app like the Every Dollar app, and we'll put a link to that below. We'll also put a link to Mr. Money Mustache's blog, just because he shows you that, man, a family. In fact, what I really like about his work is he shows you that you can live really comfortably, and he lives a life that he says is full of opulence on $24,000 a year because they are militant about their budgeting. And so I think you're right. Until you have a budget written down, you don't really know where the money is going.
Yeah.
If you don't know where the money is going, it's just going to keep going.
So the second step, I think, is you've got to get clear on where that money is going. So once you have your budget written down, you need to start at least 3 columns. We called them like, wants, needs. Now we call them, what do we call them now? Essential, non-essential, and junk, right?
That's right.
So you basically are trying to figure out, so if you look at the essential versus non-essential versus junk, essential, you need health insurance. That goes in the essential column. Non-essential, maybe you've got a car payment. You don't have to have a car payment. That's more of a want than it is a need.
It adds value to your life, but not so much that you are willing to go into debt for it.
Exactly. So then you've got things like satellite, radio that you haven't used in a month or two, or maybe you've got that streaming service that you've been paying for each month, but you maybe only watch it once every other month. Those would fall into the junk category. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the biggest junk that I've had. Oh, you know what? I won't say it's not mine, but I will say that there was a particular person I was helping out with their budgeting, and they were giving me I'm really don't make a lot of income, and I've got to have a better budget. I need to save money, and it's impossible for me. And I was like, well, okay, well, let me help you out. Let's go over a budget. And so I explained to them, kind of what they needed to do. They made it was a like, wants, and needs spreadsheet, and then they sent it over to me with their budget. And in the needs category, they had the wireless internet. You can like plug it in your computer.
Like the little Verizon pucks.
Yeah, and it's like $40 a month.
That's the need.
That was the need. They had 2 of those.
So that's in the same, for them, psychologically, that was the same category as having a roof over my head and food in my belly and wireless Wi-Fi.
Wireless internet, and they had internet at home too. That was it also.
So that's the other weird thing, because for me, internet at home is a non-essential. However, it adds value to my life, so we have it at home. But if there is a period of time where, in fact, I went 5 years without home internet, you can read about that over at theminimalists.com. So you can go without it. It is a non-essential. The non-essentials are the things that add value to your life. But what's helpful, and what you're going through with this exercise here, is sometimes it's okay to remove all those non-essentials for a temporary period of time to figure out whether or not some of those might actually be junk, and you never bring them back in.
Yeah, so we're looking over their budget, and I'm like, look, you've got 2 wireless internet cards here. That's $80 a month. Let's just suspend those for a second, and let's see how things play out. And yeah, it turns out like they could easily save themselves $80 a month. It was more than that when we went over the rest of their budget. But really look at where your money is going and ask, like, is it something that I absolutely need, or maybe it might be junk?
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah.
If you have more questions for Living Room Conversations, then you can leave them below in the comments. We'll get to as many of your questions as we can. And if you like our answers, feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right, y'all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching.
The Minimalists.